Have you ever wanted to transform into a bear and run up and just bite and claw your enemies? If so, then Circle of the Moon Druid is going to be just right for you. Welcome to the Blue Dragon Guild, a channel all about Dungeons and Dragons. I'm Baron. When it comes to Moon Druids, no one can contest their wild shaping abilities. The Moon Druid is a wonderful subclass with a bunch of really great spells, as well as some melee combat capabilities. Druid is one of those classes that can really fit any role in the party, but the Moon Druid in particular has a lot of versatile skills. One of my favorite is being the tank. With their combat wild shape, the Moon Druid, as a bonus action, can transform into a creature, meaning that they can either spend their action moving up and attacking, or they can cast a spell beforehand, concentrate on it, and then transform into the beast. And as a part of combat wild shape, as a bonus action, you can expend a spell slot and regain 1d8 worth of health for the level of spell slot. So if you expend a third level spell slot, you can regain 3d8 hit points. So that's really good in a situation where you're just staring down the boss right in his grill and he's wailing on you. If you don't have any of your spells up concentrating on, your bonus action is probably going to be best used to regain a little bit of health. So the main thing that really makes the Moon Druids so potent with their wild shape is that they are allowed to ignore the usual wild shaping rules. Now, the flying speed and swimming speed restrictions still count. You still have to unlock those at the normal rate, but starting at level 2, you can transform into a beast of CR1 or lower. And speaking from experience, that shift into the CR1 at level 2 is pretty game changing. And then at level 6, you can transform into a beast of a CR that is your Druid level divided by 3. And this maxes out at a CR of 6, so the giant ape Moon Druid monk combo, sadly not happening for you. Also at level 6, we get Primal Strike. This makes our wild shaped attacks magic for instances of overcoming damage resistances. At level 10, we get probably the coolest ability the Moon Druid gets, and that is Elemental Wild Shape. When you expend 2 uses of your wild shape, you can transform into either a fire, air, earth, or water elemental. Transforming into one of these elementals, these all have some pretty beefed up stat blocks, and they can push out a good bit of damage. And there's nothing better than in the middle of the battlefield, you just turn to your DM and say, I'm gonna wild shape into a fire elemental. Just the look on everybody else's faces at the table, because they may not know what the druid gets, and it'll be some pretty fun times. And then at level 14, we get the most lackluster ability of this class, and that is Thousand Forms. And it sounds a lot cooler than it actually is. This ability lets you cast the spell Alter Self at will. While this spell has some really fun role-playing aspects, when it comes to the rest of the class as a whole, it's just not that great. It does have some damage stuff. It makes your unarmed strikes a d6, so I can see a few instances where this will be helpful, but overall, the spell's not that great. But I'm sure there's some creative ways that this spell has been used in the past, so tell us about that down in the comments. But with all of these abilities, it is no surprise that this subclass is an absolute beast. Pun very much intended. But there's also something that I touched on a little earlier, and that is our spells. Now, you cannot cast spells while you're in wild shape, unfortunately, because that would just be way too busted. But if you have already cast a spell, you can concentrate on it while you are in that wild shape form. And there's a few spells that I personally really like to combo with this wild shaping form. And those spells are Fairy Fire, Flaming Sphere, Call Lightning, and Tsunami. All of those spells, with the exception of Tsunami, are fairly low level, and all of them give you some extra damage that you can dish out while you're in combat. Fairy Fire being the one that actually gives you a buff by giving you advantage on the targets that are affected by it. So all of these spells in conjunction with your wild shape are really going to help you just to whittle down on the main bad guy. My personal favorite is using Flaming Sphere. I just like to cast it right behind the bad guy, wild shape as I'm walking up to him, get right in front of him and just pin him in there. And on my turn, I will thump that sphere into him, and he'll take 2d6 fire damage if he fails the save. And then I'm also wailing on him with my attack. So it's a really fun combination that you can use in battle. And if you have other spellcasters in your party, they can throw their spells up too, and you can just rotate back and forth who's wailing on this guy with what spell. And then that brings us to multi-classing. What classes mix well with the Moon Druid? Automatically my mind goes to either the Barbarian or to the Monk. As a Barbarian, you get Rage. There's no rule saying you cannot rage while you are in your wild shape form. So having that rage mixed with your wild shape form is going to up your damage output. And everybody likes to do damage, so I think that's a really great combo. Really, any of the Barbarian subclasses will work really well with this, but my personal favorite from kind of a roleplay standpoint is the Sacred Ancestors. Because you're a Druid, you're tied to nature. In my mind, it just works really well together. I imagine just being transformed into a bear, and you hit your rage, and it summons your two ancestor avatars, and they run up and they start wailing on everything, and you're there too. It just paints a really nice cinematic picture in my mind. So with the Barbarian and the Monk, you get unarmored defense. While you're in your wild shape form, you are not wearing armor. So you will then benefit from this, increasing your AC in your wild shape form. I really don't think there's any losing here if you take a multi-class, maybe a few spells, but I really think that if you're playing in a game that you're not going to max level and you just have like a certain level you're going to reach, I think doing a nice split between any of those classes is going to work really well. With the Monk, I really haven't decided on which subclass I think works really well. I've been looking through them because it's something that I'm considering doing with my current Druid. And I don't know, I still have a lot more to look at with those. So maybe someday I'll make a follow-up video with the build I made for that character. As for other classes, subclasses that would go well with the Circle of the Moon Druid, I think Battlemaster would be a really interesting one. With the maneuvers, I think you could have a fun little combo there. So no matter how you're playing the Circle of the Moon Druid, I think it's one of the most versatile subclasses that you can have. You have spellcasting, you have melee combat. You can combine both of those. I really think that it is so much fun. I've been playing one for a little while, and I think it may be edging into like my top 5 favorite class subclasses. So let's take it down to the comments below. Let us know what you think about the Circle of the Moon Druid. You think it's good? Do you think it's too good? We'd love to hear about it. So if you want to see more Dungeons and Dragons showing up in your YouTube timeline, hit that subscribe button. And if you want to see a video about our Ultimate Monster Hunter, check out this video right here. And until next time, keep the dice rolling.